Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's MarkMonitor webinar, Travel and Hospitality, Building a Game-Changing Partner Compliance Strategy, where we'll be discussing the current industry landscape for the travel industry, the challenges they face, and how to implement a partner compliance program to best meet those challenges in today's changing internet landscape. Before we begin our presentation, I'd like to run everyone through a few housekeeping items. During today's webinar, only the host will be able to see the list of all attendees. All participants' lines will be muted to ensure there is no background noise. Following our presentation, we will be holding a Q&A session. If you have a question at any time for our speaker during the presentation, feel free to submit it using the Q&A tab located on your screen. You can also submit your questions at the end of the session. For any questions our speaker won't have time to answer today, we'll make sure to follow up with you after the event. We are recording today's webinar, and we plan to send out a follow-up email to all registrants with a link to the recording and presentation slides within the next couple of days. With that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today's presentation. We are joined by MarkMonitor Partner Compliance Expert Dan Morton. Dan is a Product Marketing Manager for MarkMonitor. During the past 5 years, he has focused on a wide range of issues, including affiliate and partner compliance, online traffic diversion, trademark and search engine policy violations, social media brand abuse, and online celebrity impersonation. In his current role, Dan helps communicate details of MarkMonitor brand protection internally and externally with a special focus on topics related to partner compliance and pay-per-click advertising abuse. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Dan to get us started.
Okay, thank you, Gina. I will be walking us through this overview here of the way that the game has changed. You can almost think of this as the classic story arc, kind of the hero's journey about the landscape that we're faced with and the brambles and the challenges that the brand owner faces. And then hopefully we will offer some recommendations for overcoming those challenges. And while this is the classic story, the hero is the brand owner, but the happy ending is up to you. So with that, we will jump into the first section, the travel industry landscape. And the internet obviously has changed everything. So in the old days, you had your travel agent offices. You would walk in, you would look at a bunch of magazines, you'd figure out where you want to go. There might be a bunch of phone calls. The travel agent would book your trip. Now, with the internet, you can do that all online. It's changed the way that travel is researched and booked. Now there's multiple offers. There's all kinds of different ways that you can go about booking your travel. It's highly competitive. You have people, consumers that are very price sensitive. They're shopping for the best price and deal, so they're looking at different things. And, you know, with the increase in online travel agents and meta search engines, there's less reason for the consumers to go to the airline, hotel, or car website directly. And as a brand owner, it's important to create incentives for bringing people back to the main, to those websites. And that's why we see the rise of these loyalty programs. Just a couple of statistics here to throw out. You know, 75% of leisure travelers switch between devices to plan or book a trip. You know, so that shows the importance of not only desktop search, but also mobile apps, that sort of thing. And then 65% of travelers begin with an online search portal. So that shows that they jump right into a Google or a Bing and they start typing in search results and typing in search queries to find out more about the options that are available for them. So today we're looking at the third-party booking model. So this is composed, I've got some definitions down on the bottom there. This is composed of what is commonly known as an OTA, an online travel agent, which provides booking on their site. There's another option, which is the travel aggregator, also a meta search engine, which aggregates the OTAs and the direct booking options into almost like a search engine, but they don't provide booking options from that portal. And if you look on the right there, the large number of visitors for the OTAs and the travel aggregators is huge. The ones that are highlighted, or the darker blue, are actually meta search engines, and we did that to show the rise kind of the popularity of these meta search engines versus the traditional OTAs. And then the chart on the left shows the increase in OTA booking over direct booking. And so bringing back to the, one of the challenges for a brand is how do you get consumers to do their research but then to book on your site, to actually book directly. And that's one thing we'll be looking at in a little bit. I do want to point out the future, or at least, the potential for the future here. What we have is the rise of different types of bookings options. So you have on the left, and it's a little bit, we obscured some of the information, but this is actually a screenshot from Amazon, where they've attempted to integrate travel into the e-commerce experience. So you might buy a flight just like you're buying a book or a new stapler or something. Now, that has recently closed down from Amazon, but that doesn't mean that something new won't pop up, that's more e-commerce focused. On the left is something that you'll see if you go out there and you do a destination search, you do something like what I did, which was hotels in Miami, you get a whole bunch of different options. Some of those options allow you to even book right through the search engine. And some interesting stats that I don't have on here, but when someone is starting to plan their search, 51% of the time they use destination-related search terms. So this is information coming from Google. And 31% they use a specific brand or website term. So that'll pop up again later when we're talking about branded search terms. So again, that was 51% they look at destination-related, and then 31% they actually type in a specific brand. Now, those numbers change when they're actually considering multiple possibilities. Almost half of the time they do a search for a specific brand or website, and so that's a big deal, and that's actually one of the challenges facing brand owners today. And what we'll do is I'll kind of walk through some of these different elements of the landscape that invite exploitation. And then in the third section, we'll talk about how do you overcome them, or how do you at least mitigate some of those issues. So the number one issue really right now facing brands is these diverted booking traffic from third-party OTAs. I've got some examples on the next slide, but essentially what we're talking about is not the OTAs themselves, the big ones that we saw on that last list, but the affiliates of those OTAs. So in a way, they're rogue OTA affiliates. And I've got some alerts and things I'll kind of show along those lines. Next element is the loss of control from OTAs and franchising owning your domains. It's your trademark, and if it's in somebody else's hands, then, you don't really know what they could be doing with it, and I'll look at some of those elements too. And then, of course, increased marketing costs. I mean, ultimately, you want to cut your marketing costs and deliver a higher ROI, and there's some elements to that you can incorporate into your own policies that you want to look at. And, finally, if you're looking from the point of view of the consumer, you don't want to have a lot of channel conflict, a lot of different things out there causing customer confusion. If the customers are confused, they're going to go somewhere else. I mean, that's just a fact of life. So let's get into this number one, this diverted booking traffic from rogue OTAs. So this is not a classified document leaked from the NSA. No, we take our privacy serious. We might have a little bit overzealous censors at MarkMonitor, but what we have here is actually a document. These are screenshots from, on the left is from the Better Business Bureau, and on the right is from the FTC. And you can see kind of some of the, you can Google the headlines and you could check these out for yourself and read the whole articles. But the result here is that these are third-party OTAs that are possibly putting up websites that look like the actual branded hotel, for example. And these are more focused on the hotel industry. But you know, you want to make sure that, you know, when you're dealing with OTAs that their affiliates are in compliance, and that also, you know, this comes down to a lot of domains. So if a rogue OTA has a domain that looks like your main domain, then that could cause some issues. And I took some statistics out of a report from the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and that's kind of what we're looking at right here, where they estimate about 15 million hotel bookings have been affected by these deceptive rogue affiliates. So according to their calculations, that translates into 1.3 billion going to these bad bookings. Now, these bad bookings are not necessarily fraud related. They're not outright fraud, but if you look at this chart, you can see, you know, you're booking on a rogue OTA, you may or may not get the room that you wanted. You might have been charged more for your reservation. You probably most certainly didn't get your rewards points if you're not going direct. Cancellation issues. I mean, if you look at some of the lesser frequent things, they had their identity or private information stolen. You know, so that goes more to like the fraud and the phishing side of things. But it's definitely you know, these are definitely things you want to look at. And I just got a chat notice. Somebody asked about sharing this presentation, and I believe, yes, we will be sending that out. Okay. So the next area of challenge is control of your branded domains. So domains in the wrong hands can cause brand damage. You know, the first one is the traffic diversion, you know, the rogue OTAs buying your domains. Obviously, that's not a good thing. But then there's other ones that might be a little bit more benign that maybe you don't think about, and that is if you have a franchise and they own the domain for their franchise plus the franchise plus maybe the location, then you don't want necessarily them to own that domain, because hotels do rebrand, and if they rebrand to a competitor, they'll still own that domain, and we've seen it where they actually redirect that domain to their new location. So, you know, that's something to think about. And then the fraud and phishing. So, you know, if it's a site that looks like yours or a domain that looks like yours, they could redirect it to a phishing site and, you know, try to steal your customers' information. Okay, just taking a drink of water there. So we have another challenge is obviously the increased marketing costs. So jump to that blue box down at the bottom. You know, when you have an increase in loyalty programs, you have more branded related search queries. So also from that, the Google survey where it was 31% and 48% of people looking for a specific branded term, you know, using, you know, if you're a brand owner using your brand, you want that traffic to go to you. If you have your partners bidding on those keywords, you know, it's going to be driving up your costs. Like this hypothetical example here, if, you know, you see $1 increase, you know, that's on 10,000 clicks, that's $10,000 extra dollars you're paying out your marketing team. But it's more on the order of millions of clicks or hundreds of thousands of clicks. And so that translates into a pretty big, you know, marketing cost when you have higher keyword costs. And those come about because you have multiple people that are bidding on your brand. And so if it's under your control, for example, if it's in your agreement with your partners, then you can control that. You can put in terms and different things that prevent them from bidding on your branded keyword terms. Excess commissions this is in the examples of where a customer is looking for your branded terms and they would have normally found your, direct site. Instead, they're booking with another company. And so you have to pay out commissions that you probably wouldn't have. Lower ad rank, visibility, and whenever you get into a situation where you're bidding, you may or may not be the highest ranked one result. And then obviously any lost sales will impact your marketing ROI. So all things to consider, and they all kind of stem from the rules around which your partners are bidding on your branded keywords. So customer confusion, the goal of any partner program is to extend the brand to new customers and new channels. So how do you want your brand represented? Do you want it to look as consistent and uniform as the example on the left? Or, if your partner's kind of running wild a little bit, it might look like the example on the right. So consistency is the name of the game, and you've got a lot of different areas where you can maintain that consistency across logos and images. Website, whether the franchisee has a booking engine, and they have it in the left side versus the right side, so the whole booking experience. You've got domain names and, different, messaging and promos, whatever it is, you want that to be consistent across the board, because ultimately it's the customer that's going to see your brand, and if they see multiple different representations of your brand, a blue box versus a gray box versus a red box, whatever, that's going to impact them, and they're going to be confused. They're not going to know who the real McCoy is. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some recommendations. And these are for, a successful travel partner program. MarkMonitor, we have a lot of different, recommendations and workflows and different things. And so these are, from our perspective, what you should have if you're a travel brand. You want to have this systematic approach. I'll walk through each one of these in a separate slide, but I'll just cover the overview here. You want to have a systematic approach. You want to have a checkbox approach kind of across different channels, and I'll show an example of that. You want to consistently monitor your brand, across geos, across time. You want to look at it. You don't want to just be pulling up a search engine once in a while and seeing, what paid ads are there or what you're seeing on social media sites. You want to more consistently monitor that, and a lot of times that takes technology. I mean, it's the truth of it. Prioritize your compliance efforts. So it doesn't make sense to boil the ocean. You want to go after the high-value targets. You want to go after some other ones that are maybe quick wins for you, that you can then show your ROI to the executives. Enforce your brand policies. Obviously, this requires a very strong contract to be in place. And then partner with brand protection experts. So, folks that know kind of the lay of the land can help guide you through it and through the challenges. So this is an example of, a kind of a comprehensive partner, checkbox approach of having multiple channels and what types of misuse you might be looking at across these different areas. I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can kind of see, covers, your websites, website content, domains, paid search ads, social media, even marketplaces. In some cases that might not apply, but for some brands it might, and mobile app stores. So it's something that is definitely gaining more popularity. It's on a lot of people's radar. It's something that you need to pay attention to. So consistently monitor for brand misuse. You want to look across threat vectors. Threat vectors are obviously the different channels, anywhere that you might have a partner or even an infringer operating. You've got to monitor regularly. It's got to be consistent. And even within monitoring regularly, you don't want it to be at the same time every day. For example, you want it to be at 5:00 p.m. or at 3 a.m. You want to have you want to be looking at the internet at different times, different locations. You've got to use technology kind of to help that resource crunch. You want to look at different geographic areas, especially if your brand operates across Europe, for example, or Asia. You want to look at those areas. And then finally, you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. What keywords are they looking for? What websites, mobile apps, social media accounts are they finding? If you go out, you search for your brand in some of the popular app stores, what apps are showing up? Do you have a franchisee that has created 5 apps and they all have a different branding, and who knows? So some of this stuff we do see. There's a lot of different areas that you want to pay attention to. There we go. Okay, focus on high-value targets first. So you want to target the most egregious and frequent violators, that impact your ROI. These might be your partners that are, very high-dollar partners, and they're consistently breaking your policies, and it's difficult sometimes to have that conversation and say, we do have this policy for a reason, and we need to rein you in, or, I don't know how you'd want to term it, but essentially, if you have a policy in place and someone is violating it, you need to bring them in. And so that could be your highest dollar partners. On the opposite side, you have quick wins. Potentially there's some low-hanging fruit that you can go after. Maybe, for example, logos. If you just change your logos, you can easily pull in websites and see, this website doesn't have the updated logo. Let's contact them and get that logo updated. Okay, this one doesn't either. So, out of, 1,000, maybe, 150 aren't using the updated logo. You can just knock those out real quick with some notifications, and now, you've at least brought that part of your brand into consistency. So those are kind of two opposite sides. You've got your high value targets, and then you've got your low hanging fruit. So you got to consider both things, but you don't want to get bogged down and try to go after something that's going to take a lot of time and effort and not yield a lot of return. Click there. Okay. Stand behind your partner agreement. So the partner agreement really is the cornerstone of your program. So you want to start with a strong travel partner agreement. You'll hear us on webinars and different things talk about this pretty frequently. Adjust your policies as new technology or situation warrants. So with respect to mobile apps, do you have a mobile app policy? What is it? You want to adjust it. You want to continuously change things for the new situations that you encounter. And you want to notify your partners of any changes so that they don't have the excuse that they didn't know. A lot of times agreements, whatever agreement they are, they're 20 pages long, and a lot of times people don't read them very carefully. So it's best to notify of any changes. And then you want to maintain a current list of your travel partners and all their relevant contact information so that it's not a chore to go out there and contact people and to send them emails. You don't want to have those emails bouncing. You don't want to know that the contact for the program is, left 3 years ago. So that's a big part of your compliance program is, keeping that list current. So along the lines of travel and hospitality guidelines, I've added just a few guidelines that we commonly see across the different clients that we have and the different brands that we interact with. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you could kind of read them, and I can talk through a few. But, essentially, the website must clearly indicate that the travel agency is the website operator, and so that they don't look like an official website. That's kind of the next one there too, is that they're claiming to be an official website. That's a big no-no. And you want the customers to know this is actually an affiliate, this is a travel partner, this is not the main brand, essentially. A lot of times that involves trademarks in the domain names. We've seen different guidelines regarding typos. Sometimes not so much now. People will start with a search engine, but if you put you mistype the name in the domain or in the URL bar, that could go to a different domain. And hidden text in the background, is one that you don't really see a whole lot anymore, but, just to kind of get higher in search rankings. And I skipped over one about cannot present one type of content to a search engine but redirect visitors. This is a form of cloaking. And so you don't want to have the search engine look at one thing and then have visitors go to a different place. Paid search, obviously brand typos or keyword terms. There's some different rules around if you have the brand in the ad, then it should go to a landing page that is focused on that brand. If you have the brand in the ad and it goes to a competitor, it goes to a site that has multiple different options, then that's not good for the brand. And consumers are going to be confused. They're looking for a certain company, and they go to another one, and they go to a landing page, and there's a whole bunch of different options there. That's lost sales. So I guess that's that third bullet point there. And then negative matching is essentially talking about when you have a paid ad campaign, the folks that are putting up the ads, so in this case it would be your partners, you want to make sure that they've negatively matched your brand terms so that anybody searching for those brand terms don't find those ads. And that's pretty easy to do, and they should be, instead, those partners should be collecting essentially the crumbs of someone looking for a cruise to the Caribbean or a flight to Miami instead of a specific brand name. And then social media, that's sometimes you'll see usernames and pictures and different things that will confuse customers as to, is this the official social media site or not? So I've got here an example of what I was talking about with the landing pages and the branded text. And again, it's a little bit of the blurring here. It makes it hard to read. But if you focus on the red boxes, and where it says brand, that's actually a name of a company. So if you insert your company name there, you can say XYZ Travel Company Cruise Deals, and then it goes to a website that lets somebody choose any cruise line. And so if they're searching for a specific cruise line, and then they go here and they can select any cruise line, again, that's a lost traffic, that's lost sales for that brand. And so these are usually, not allowed in partner agreements. So kind of on the tail end of our journey here, partner with brand protection experts. Obviously, expertise is a big part of this, and it's can be the difference between success or failure. Partnering with a third party gives you additional resources, technology, and expertise. In our case, we've got established workflows and best practices, and then we're also involved with policy and legislative discussions and bring our customers into those. And this is just an example of, it's a case of an actual customer that we've anonymized, but we had a good number of results for them. We returned $23.5 million in revenue by correcting compliance problems on 425 affiliate franchise sites. So, there's a lot of benefit there to partnering with a company that's focused and knows this area. And I just want to let you know too about if you're interested, there's more information on our website. We've got a white paper, step-by-step guide, how travel and hospitality brands protect their traffic and revenue in the digital world. So it includes more details about what I've talked about here that you can read and you can check out. So I believe that is the last slide I have, and so I'll turn it back over to Gina.
Great, thank you, Dan.
Sure.
So we're now ready to open up our Q&A session. So as a quick reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A tab on your screen. I do also want to remind everyone that we will be sharing the webinar slides and the recording. You'll be getting those in the next couple of days. So we had a couple questions come in about that. Our first question is, you mentioned that we should have a complete list of partners, but ours are spread across different departments. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so we do see that quite a bit, and it has to do with, sometimes there's geography issues, sometimes there's different, internal account reps that own different partner relationships, and it's really important to get all of that together in one place. And so it might just require a lot of legwork and just going around to the different account owners who own the relationships and gathering that information and keeping it current, perhaps keeping it in a central repository or online shared drive, something like that where people can update regularly. But when it starts coming back to whitelisting these people and helping to determine, is this a partner, is this an infringer, having that central list is a big help.
Okay, great. Another question that came in. We have a former franchisee that still has some of our domains. How can we get them back?
So if you, in that case where you have the example I gave of the hotel that rebranded, a lot of times if they owned the domain names, then they might still hang on to them. You can refer back to the agreement that you had with them. Obviously it's best to keep things cordial and start with the soft letter notification. And in a lot of cases, that's what we'll do on a workflow basis. Start with that soft letter and then escalate it. But ultimately, if it's your trademark and they're not using it, and if they're potentially directing it to a competitor's site, then you have definitely legal grounds to go after that domain name.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Another question is, how do you show progress for a quick win?
Okay, so a quick win, kind of like what I was saying, depends on what the problem is and what you're seeing out there. But if it's a situation where you're seeing a lot of something that you can, document, you can take it to your executives to say, we had this problem, however you would solve it. For example, if you were to send out letters, you can then document and show the results of that quick win and show how your program is progressing. And I think that's important to internal stakeholders that you see some progress. And we know in the brand protection industry that things take a lot of time sometimes. It takes a lot of cycles to get a website down or to get a logo changed or whatever it is. But if you can get something that you get some progress quickly and you can document that, then that helps your program.
Okay, so one more question. I think the last one we have time for is, what should I look for in mobile app stores? What kind of violations?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have that on my slide deck, but it essentially, you're looking at your brand name and doing searches across the different mobile stores to see if there's any violations from franchisees. Sometimes they'll put up their own apps that are for their customers at their location, that they very well might not be consistent with your branding guidelines, or they might be completely in violation. And so that would be something to work with the developer and the franchisee or the partner to get down, because you don't want a customer out there searching your name and seeing all kinds of different apps. That's just kind of bad branding in that space. So.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Dan. So that was a really great presentation. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with our audience today. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. We had some great questions come in that helped draw out more information for those listening in. So as a reminder, we'll be sending out the follow-up email with a link to the webinar's presentation slides and a recording within the next couple of days. Dan mentioned we have the travel and hospitality white paper, so we'll try to include that as well. So those of you who are interested can have a chance to take a look at it and read it. And so just look out for that email. So this concludes our webinar for today. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great day, everyone.